I'd like to bring in Florida State Representative Blaise Ingoglia. Hi, Blaise. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon.
How are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm well.
Good. So we want to get to this mail-in voting issue. This issue has been a major talking point throughout 2020, and especially as the coronavirus pandemic impacts the country. As Democrats are pushing to expand the option for anyone amid this pandemic, what are the dangers, though, of widespread mail-in voting?
Well, I think it's important to distinguish what the president is saying, and especially what you're seeing today in the tweet. Is what the president is against is what the Democrats have been pushing for a while now, and that is universal vote by mail ballots. And that is a big difference between that and voting absentee. It's a difference between somebody requesting the ballot or somebody not requesting the ballot. What the president is against, and I think a lot of us are against, is what some states are doing, are sending ballots out to everyone, regardless of whether they requested one or not. And when that happens, you get people who have ballots. You have ballots mailed out to people who are moved. You get ballots mailed out to illegal immigrants, to dead people, and cartoon characters. So the president is right, because if we don't stop what the Democrats want and what the Democrats are doing, we're going to get, illegal immigrants, Abraham Lincoln, and Mickey Mouse voting in the next election.
Now, you yourself sponsored a bill in the Florida State House that expands access to voting by changing deadlines that would offer voters and election supervisors more time to submit and count ballots. How would that help amid this pandemic?
Well, it's going to help because we're probably going to see an uptick in the request for absentee ballots in the state of Florida. So in Florida now, you have up to 40 days of voting. You can request an absentee ballot, you can vote by mail, you can still vote early, and then you can still vote at the polls. And what we did was give enough people to get their ballots back. They can actually mail it back. They can walk them into the precinct, into the supervisor of elections office, or they can drop them off at predetermined locations. What we're trying to do with that is make sure we don't have a repeat of last election where we had Palm Beach and Broward County just basically messing everything up.
A recent poll did find a majority of voters in the U.S. would prefer to vote in person, citing the potential for fraud in mail-in ballots. Do any of the proposals you've put forward in the Florida state, do they prevent fraud? And then how can the U.S. overall prevent fraud in the 2020 election?
Well, we have to be vigilant. We have to understand what fraud is, and a lot of that is ballot harvesting. And just as proof that fraud exists, and in my opinion, Democrats want fraud to happen, is look no further than the first coronavirus stimulus package. Nancy Pelosi basically put it into the bill. I believe it was Section 322, if I'm not mistaken, where it institutionalized ballot harvesting, which means if there's a ballot sitting there at a mailbox where somebody had moved, sort of like what the president is against right now, then they can fill out those ballots for their candidates and put them on their front seat and drive them in. In the state of Florida, we sort of outlawed that. We made sure that there was correct chain of custody. We made sure that there was ample time and ample places for them to vote. But what's important here in the state of Florida is that you can actually track your ballot. So if you're worried about your ballot, my suggestion is get the ballot in the mail as quickly as possible. And then you can go to your supervisor of elections office and verify that it was received back. So we do have, we believe that we do it here right in the state of Florida. But let me be clear on this also, what the president is against, and I 1000% agree with him, is mailing ballots out to everyone, whether they want it or not. And this is important. So about 75 to 80% of all the people vote during election. That's the turnout, which means about 20% people don't vote. Could you imagine in some of these states where they're sending out ballots to everyone, where if they have a higher return rate, you know that these people are taking ballots out of mailbox and committing ballot fraud.
All right. Florida State Representative Blaise Ingoglia joining us to discuss the issue of widespread mail-in voting in the 2020 election. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One America News on YouTube, and call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.